Okay, I can already hear you saying, so where does this 2-5-1 sequence get its name? Well, let's start referring to these chords as numbers, and I'm sure you'll begin to see where all this is going. You've already seen how important it's been to understand a scale both as notes and as numbers, and the same is true about chords and chord sequences too. Now, numbering chords is, as you'll be pleased to hear, very easy to do, and the system musicians use is directly related to the scales and modes you've already been numbering and using in your studies so far. If we take our G7 first, this chord, if you remember, was created using the chord tones from G Mixolydian. Now, here's the important bit. We also learnt that G Mixolydian was the fifth mode of the C major scale. So if we were to number this chord, we'd quite simply refer to it as a 5 chord. So, the fifth mode, the 5 chord. Okay, so far so good. Now, in music theory, we don't actually use numbers. Instead, we use Roman numerals. So writing it down, our G7 chord is now referred to as a 5 chord. Taking this one step further again, we can now add on to our Roman numeral the type of chord we're dealing with here. So putting this all together, we end up with a 5-7 chord. As we learnt earlier, this G7 or 5-7 chord is unstable and wants to move on and resolve to a C major, or if we were to extend it, a C major 7th chord. And using our chord numbering system and of course Roman numerals, we'd quite simply refer to this as our 1 chord. Hopefully you can see why it's called the 1 chord and not any other number, as C major, remember, was our first scale or key that we've been so far constructing the other modes from. So, using our C major 7th chord and pasting the chord type onto the end, we can now refer to this as a 1 major 7th. Remember, again, all we've done is put the chord type after the number. Okay, so there's the 5-1 part of the sequence, so let's now take a look at the 2. And if you haven't already guessed it, the 2 refers to our D minor 7th chord. Now, we number this in the same way, using Roman numerals and putting the chord type on the end, we now have a 2 minor 7th. Now, the reason why I've used lowercase Roman numerals is because this time the chord is minor and not major. In this key, the D minor 7th is called the 2 chord because quite simply we constructed it from the Dorian mode, which happens to be the 2nd mode of the C major scale. 2nd mode, 2 chord. So, putting these chords together in order, our 2-5-1 will look and sound like this. D minor 7th, G7, and C major 7th. Now personally, I find the sound of this chord sequence really satisfying, as each chord resolves to the next in a very pleasing and melodic way. And believe me, I'm not the only one to enjoy the sound of a 2-5-1. As this sequence crops up in literally thousands of songs across all styles of music. Okay, firstly, thanks for sticking with me through that one, as I can appreciate how daunting all this new information can seem at first. But I feel that as a bass player, understanding how different types of chord function in music is a great skill to have, and is another element to creating strong bass lines and melodic ideas. One great advantage about numbering any chord sequence, just like the one we've done with our 2-5-1, is that we can easily change key without too much panic. But I'll explain more about that in our next session. For now though, what I'd like you to do is just have a go at building your own bass lines and melodic ideas to accompany our 2-5-1 chord sequence in the key of C major. Again, use what you've been taught so far in how to handle each of these different chords and see what works with the backing track at the end of this session. If you play something you like the sound of, then well done, as you've single-handedly created something that you can use every time you encounter a 2-5-1 in the future. Good luck, and I'll see you soon.